seen the Democratic Alliance being hit by political turmoil. It's just one of many opposition parties who are facing their own internal wrangling. So what does this mean for the future of opposition politics? And of course, we have different organizations that have been lobbying for reform within the electoral system. Musi Maimane of One SA is just one of those leaders who has been trying to do that. Musi, good evening, and thank you so much for your time. Naturally, when we saw John Moody resign from the DA yesterday, people would have been curious to know what you would have to say about it, because he even mentioned you, and he says you're leaving the DA is part of the reason why some who are still within the organization are being targeted.
Good evening, and good evening to fellow South Africans. I think without doubt this is always an indicator of the nature and the extent of some of the dysfunction within our body politic in its broader sense. Indeed, today South Africans either need to be observing as to what happens inside party wranglings rather than they themselves having the power to do so. And I think that, to me, the broader issue in our country is that we cannot be asking citizens to go to the ballot box to express a choice between what we've seen as nationalists on one end, where you have the ANC, and on another end, you have what parties, it's not a choice between black versus white parties, where in fact some of the issues that Mr. Moody raises pertain to race relations, even inside the organizations. I think that it's about time that we identify crucial individuals in communities who will stand and represent their communities, rather than each one of us being forced to make a choice about saying, well, I choose this party because it is the black party, and I choose that party because it's the white party. That's not the South Africa we want to build.
One of the things that you've been dedicating your time to is lobbying for electoral reform. I'm curious to know, what role do you see yourself playing in the future of South Africa?
I love this country, I love the people of this country, and ultimately the objective I want to be able to do is to build a movement of South Africans that can reform the politics of this country. And because if we're going to see change, it has to come from the grassroots level up. It has to be a revolution of South Africans that can bring change. And I want to be a part of that change. And if one day citizens believe that I can serve them in elected office, I will avail myself to be able to do that so that we can continue the work of bringing about change in our nation. It is the role about making sure that South Africa is a much more inclusive country. And when we talk about One South Africa, it isn't just a deferred dream or hope, but it is something that all of us work towards.
Given the fact that, of course, you're open about not being opposed to the idea of standing for election to South Africa's leadership, should you so be called upon one day, does that mean that the One South Africa movement in many respects then also becomes a way of forming and establishing some kind of political base that you would know, should you decide to go that route, would probably be willing to stand behind you?
I wouldn't want for One South Africa movement to become a political party. I think that the reason we are in this deep mess as a country is because of political parties and politicians. What I would rather want us to do is to identify key individuals in communities who are able to stand for elections so that communities can vote for them. See, we need, because then it will be the businessman, the civil society leader, the faith-based organization person who can come from that community and for people to vote for them to be able to bring them into parliament. The question that we should be asking, Kathy, is, do we have the best 400 members to be able to constitute parliament? And I would argue, no, we don't. What we desperately need is for people to come from communities so that we get the best 400 citizens to represent us in that parliament. Otherwise, it is going to be party wranglings. It is going to be just oppositional for the sake of it, without really offering congruent, concrete solutions to people in communities and society. When MPs take an oath of office, they swear allegiance to the Constitution. But what it seems is happening at the moment is that they swear allegiance to the party's constitution, not to the country's constitution.
What does this mean in the context of next year's local government election? So what role are you seeing the One South Africa movement play? And do you foresee a situation where some who may be leaders within this movement also putting their hands up as independent candidates in next year's election?
Well, local government allows the space to be able to do so. And ultimately, where there's a community, and I would urge community members, if you're sick and tired of the political parties that are in your communities, let's identify a person, you vote for them, and let them represent your interests in the council, especially come next year's election. The big trick here is about making sure that we can train those people, we can give them the appropriate contract between them and the community, not them and the party, so that if the community wants to remove that person, they can happily do so. And I believe that next year is the best opportunity for us to be able to work through as many respective councils as possible in preparation for the electoral reform bill, which will come before 2024, that will allow for independent candidates to stand for parliament. And in that instance, we can truly bring change. Kathy, before 1994, it was a movement of South Africans from respective sectors of society who were able to usher in change. And I believe if South Africans are tired about the current state of our body politic, it must be citizens themselves who are able to mobilize to bring about that change.